Thank you. In the words of Delegate Pippi, who looks like walked out, here comes the craziness from Baltimore County, Carroll County, and Frederick County relating to the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. So I am here to ask for your consideration of House Bill 631. This bill is introduced in response to that aforementioned project, one I am sure that you are all intimately acquainted with at this point, so I won't go into that in too much detail. The problem with the line, one of the many issues with the line, is that the current recommendation does cut across a great number of acres of preserved land. The proposed line cuts through 245, almost 246 acres of conserved land, and the action would be seriously detrimental to our state's commitment to preserve 600,000 acres of agricultural and open space by 2040. So I am asking you to prohibit the government or any instrumentality of it from using eminent domain to take land that is already subject to an existing conservation easement. You heard a bill from me a week or two ago that was a different version of the same concept, but it just asked, pretty please, would you please not allow them to do this? Please consider other options if the land is under preservation easement. This is a much stronger bill, and I hope that you will consider it as well. It's cross-filed in the Senate as Senate Bill 189 by Senator Brooks and Hettleman, and I respectfully ask for a favorable report on House Bill 631. Thank you. And I will yield all questions to Delegate Charkoudian.
Go ahead, next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Tyler Huff, Maryland Farm Bureau, here in support of HB 631, and we thank the delegate for bringing this bill. Maryland farmers work tirelessly to preserve agricultural land for future generations, safeguarding the state's agricultural heritage and ensuring food security for its citizens. The Maryland Farm Bureau policy strongly aligns with the principles set forth in HB 631. We oppose the taking of preserved ag land by eminent domain, as well as the taking of land protected by conservation easements. These actions not only diminish the effectiveness of preservation programs, but also erode the trust and participation of landowners in such programs. This legislation is not only about protecting land, it's about honoring commitments that have been made by Maryland farmers and landowners who have voluntarily entered into preservation agreements. It also serves to uphold the state's broader goals, fostering sustainable agriculture, mitigating climate change, and conserving natural habitats. Would be happy to answer any questions, and we respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Thompson, here today on behalf of Maryland Grain Producers Association in support of this legislation. I'd like to speak specifically to the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation Program, or MALPF, which was created in 1977 via legislation by this body. And the statutory purpose of that program is to preserve productive farm and woodland for the continued production of food and fiber for all Maryland citizens, and curb the expansion of random urban development, and to protect agricultural open space. This is the first of its kind program in the country, and it's actually held up as the gold standard of agricultural land preservation programs throughout the country, and has preserved over 350,000 acres of prime and productive farmland in the state. So taking agricultural land via eminent domain does disrupt the agricultural production occurring on those parcels, which is contrary to the purpose of the land preservation program in the first place. Specific to the MPRP project, we did get our hands on one of the easement agreements, and within that agreement it said that you may not move equipment over 12 feet tall under the transmission lines. That takes out our sprayers. That takes out our combines. So not only can we not farm under those transmission lines, but we can't move our equipment back and forth between parcels that are cut up by the transmission lines. So we feel as though this would be extremely disruptive for future agricultural production, and again in conflict with the purpose of the preservation program, and we would urge your favorable report. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you, Chair Wilson. I'm Michael Sonnenfeld, Chair of the Easement Committee for Land Preservation Trust. LPT is a local land trust that holds 380 conservation easements on over 14,000 acres of land, and we're the administrator for the state of the Piney Run Rural Legacy Area. LPT strongly supports House Bill 631 to protect the privately owned land subject to the terms of a conservation easement from eminent domain. Maryland has invested over $1.3 billion to protect land throughout the state by purchasing conservation easements, and these easements allow the state to dedicate land to an important public purpose at a low cost with no ongoing expense as the owner of the land. Conserving ag and open space land is critically important, and HB 631 will protect that land from being targeted as it was specifically by the MPRP planners at PSEG. It leaves in place in the bill the opportunity for other critical infrastructure, and we think that it's important for Maryland's largest economic sector, agriculture, maintaining the scenic views and rural character of the communities throughout the state, promoting clean air, clean water, capturing carbon and limiting greenhouse gases, and promoting the health of the natural ecosystems on which we all rely. So again, we urge a favorable report on 631 and to just protect Maryland's investment in ag and open space. Thank you.
Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today is Piedmont Reliability Project Day. Is that correct? Delegate Guyton.
We had another Piedmont Reliability Project Day about 2 weeks ago, so I think there have been many.
Okay, yeah, we had a bill before, and I didn't connect the dots. Frankly, I was asking questions about eminent domain because I don't see these bills at all, but certainly we're seeing, now that I'm looking at the hearing agenda, at least 4 bills today. So, I mean, I'll ask the same question I asked Delegate Grice. This eminent domain conversation is important. Why? Is it because this is actually happening? They're using eminent domain, or have they already exercised eminent domain in this example?
Thank you, Delegate Adams. So this example, the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project has just gone to CPCN. There is concerns of individuals that are along the line that eminent domain will be used if this is accepted and that path gets that CPCN. To my knowledge, it has been a handful of times, 4 or 5, that eminent domain has been used for transmission lines. And the reason behind that is ultimately they get to the point of negotiation after the CPCN gets put into place. The members within Baltimore, Carroll, Frederick County are very, very concerned about this, how it will disrupt the land. You heard Ms. Thompson's testimony mention it won't be able to even move sprayers and essential equipment underneath these lines. So it has been used, eminent domain has been used a handful of times. This project has not been used yet because it has not received a CPCN yet.
So in other words, you're saying that the bill is necessary because for them to do this, they have to use eminent domain. And because they're pursuing this, they haven't stopped the pursuit. That's why the bill's here, because the only way for you to actually stop it under that circumstance is to assert what the bill's asking.
Respectfully, sir, I don't believe it is necessary for them to use eminent domain on conserved land to actually build the project. I believe there are other ways that they can do it. But in response to your original question, yes, under the proposed pathway that they're taking to the PSC, it would cut through almost 246 acres of conserved land.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I'll just close by saying this. On the other bill, I was surprised by looking at the bill agenda. It is clear that the Piedmont Reliability Project is driving a lot of frustration, concern in the state of Maryland on any number of projects, and it would be right for me to say what I'm saying now through the lens of the agenda here, that perhaps I didn't capture the mood of the day with these bills. And thank you for the good fight on what you're doing on this project and the bill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill that was proudly co-sponsored by myself and a very good bipartisan bill, because we're all very much affected by this. I would love to get a copy of that easement agreement if you don't mind, after the fact. And is it not the case that when we first started learning about this I think it was July of last summer, that one of the very first news reports was the gentleman from PSEG basically saying right off the bat, well, if we have to, we're just going to take the land by eminent domain. That's how they came out of the box. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. And then along the way, they've softened on that and said, oh, we wouldn't do this. We would only do this in emergency cases. But in fact, that's not how they started the conversation. And the proposed route also does not indicate that.
Would it be fair to say that they softened their response because of the outpouring of thousands of citizens from Baltimore, Carroll, and Frederick County who came out and said how upset they were about the attitude and the way that they're going about this entire process and the lack of transparency?
I think that's fair to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is on Malv. So my understanding with that easement, you can't build anything on that land, right? So if the transmission line were built over that, how would that work? Would they have to repay the fund?
No, so the MALP easement agreements and then also rural legacy easement agreements some of them do actually explicitly allow for the taking of the land via eminent domain for transmission lines. However, we have found in certain easement agreements after certain or before certain dates. So for example, in rural legacy agreements before 2003, there is a provision where the taking would require legislative approval by the Maryland General Assembly. So we're not sure exactly what that looks like, but there would be some legislative approval there. And then in some of the MALP agreements, it actually says specifically the taking for generation or transmission to benefit Marylanders. So in the case of our understanding of the path of the MPRP now, it may not actually stop in Maryland. It may just go straight through to Virginia, so that energy would not necessarily benefit Marylanders. So it can be done with some caveats.
Okay, so if that language is in certain contracts, I guess this would trump that if it passes, or?
Right, this would protect all of the easement agreements.
Okay, so what do your easement agreements say today? Do they allow it or not allow it?
They, in general, allow for it with for overhead transmission lines with the two caveats that I mentioned that would require either legislative approval or the benefit of Marylanders. If this bill were to pass, then it would prohibit the taking for all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any plans to change the language in those given this proposed transmission line?
So the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation is governed by a board, and that would be their decision. And I'm not on it,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for the sponsor, I just have a quick question. It's kind of on the line of the last question. So you have some favorable with amendments and other amendments. So the MACO amendment, you've read that. Are you favorable with addressing that? I think I kind of heard your panel say yes to that.
We would be favorable. There's also another recommendation or amendment request from AOPA, I believe.
Yeah.
That personally makes sense to me.
Okay.
That if they must extend runways for public safety, but I have not discussed it with the folks up here at this table. But,
Understood.
But that would be something that personally I would consider a good use of that land.
And I think the AOPA amendment falls in line with why MDOT says that they have issues with it. So I think if you address that, you would address the MDOT concern, and you seem to be amenable to that.
Yes, I am. And thank you so much for reading this file so carefully.
I really do, all the time. Thank you.
No further questions to this panel. Now we have also favorable Gracie Middleton.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Grayson Middleton with Delmarva Chicken Association. For the sake of time, I won't take any more time than is needed. I think that the panel pretty much well covered everything that I was going to say. I'll just add that I think that this conversation is even more critical now given recent budget considerations to MALF that have the potential to completely cut out the program. So we're looking at, for probably a considerable amount of time, possibly no more land added to this program. We want to do everything that we can to protect it. And I already explained the importance of agriculture to my industry and land preservation and the other, the hearing on Friday. So I'll just leave it at that, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.